Nearly all of the windows on Beacon Hill had already been locked and shuttered. Up ahead on the corner of Pinckney and West Cedar, Garrett spied two lone figures, their hands firm on the brims of their hats. It was old Dovehouse conversing with the new choirmaster from King's Chapel. The carriage approached, its wheels rattling in the street. "Back again, old boy." "I am, sir," Garrett replied. "Good to have you. Congratulations on your victories. I never doubted them for a second." The senator returned a nod. Dovehouse never doubted anything, a characteristic that had been amusing Garrett for close to 40 years. The victories to which old Dovehouse referred were the many Republican triumphs from the previous congressional session. The ratification of the 15th Amendment, giving freed men the right to vote. The passage of the First Enforcement Act, empowering the federal government to prosecute the Klan directly. And the election of Hiram Revels, a black Mississippi minister, to Jefferson Davis's old seat in the Senate chamber. A change unimaginable 20 years earlier, when Senator James B. Garrett, at the age of 39, had begun his career as a statesman. "I suppose we can move on with things now," Dovehouse called out as the senator's carriage continued up the street. Garrett offered no reply. With the readmission of Georgia, the last of the outcast Confederate states, back into the Union, there were those, like Dovehouse, who had emphatically declared the country reunited, but Garrett had no intention of moving on, at least not until he had secured fundamental rights for all the country's citizens. When the senator at last arrived at his house, it, too, was dark and motionless, except for the swirling clusters of maple leaves in front of it. The house glared at him as if it were displeased with his lateness, and its unblinking frown gave him no comfort. When the front door opened and Garrett descended from the carriage, a sudden gust of wind scattered the leaves from his path. In the doorway stood a heavy-set woman wearing a gingham dress. "Welcome home, sir," Jenny said. "Dear Jenny, is something the matter?" "It's Mrs. Garrett. She's received a letter. She's waiting for you in the drawing room." His Jenny. She had been with him for nearly 20 years now. He stepped inside, handing her his hat and his gloves. His face, he knew, betrayed him. "Sir," Jenny said. "Thank you, Jenny," Garrett said. The groans of the hinges welcomed Senator Garrett as he opened the great doors of the drawing room. The room's curtains were drawn, blocking out most of the day's remaining light, and outside the wind howled unmercifully. "Elizabeth?" In the dimness his wife's profile emerged. "James," she said, We've heard from—" Elizabeth's chin fell, and Garrett moved toward her. She released what was in her hands, with a surprising lack of resistance. Garrett approached the curtains and held the letter near the split of light. It read, 17 July, 1870. Dear Mrs. Garrett, I write to inform you of the miraculous news. We have received word from your son, William Jeffrey. He has made contact through a dream, and he is bathed in flowers and sunlight. I realize that this message arrives sooner than I had predicted, but the movements of those in the spirit world can be rather sudden, and as such, we must move with great speed. Please, come to the gallery tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so that we may execute your photograph immediately. Yours sincerely, Edward Moody, photographer, 258 Washington Street, Boston. Garrett read the news with a mixture of uncertainty and disdain. 2 weeks earlier, Elizabeth had written him in Washington to tell him that she had made a visit to Mr. Moody, the so-called spirit photographer, who had achieved notoriety in recent years. It appears that Mr. Moody has a gift, she had told her husband. And when he read those words, he was surprised, for his wife had always been the more skeptical of the two of them. A man who could photograph spirits? It was not something one would have expected Elizabeth to believe in. He had thought that her initial letter might have described a whimsy, but when a second letter arrived, citing Colfax's highly publicized visit to Moody, he recognized that his wife had become attached to this idea. Now, as she was looking over at him imploringly, which was another strange thing, because his wife usually demanded rather than implored, but he understood, for just the sight of his son's name, scribbled on a folded piece of paper, was enough to unbury what so much rehearsed forgetting had kept secreted away for years.